Hello, and welcome to this fourth lecture of optimizing and prediction of this course on winning prototype development. I'm Arun Singhal, your management coach and mentor with 40 years of experience in people development. So, in this section, we've been looking at understanding how to optimize and predict the prototype behavior that we have been trying to develop so far in this winning prototype development process. And we have looked at in the last lecture what is TOC, and what we will look at is how to use the TOC to optimize cost using the example of the water purifier that we have been running through. Right. So let's see what are the steps in the TOC. Let's recap quickly and how can we apply this to the filtering element manufacturing of the water purifier. So the 5 steps were identifying the constraint first in the manufacturing process, exploiting that constraint, subordinating other activities to the constraint, elevating the constraint, and then going back to step 1 and starting again. So we will look at each of these steps as we go forward, right? Okay. So let's look at the first step of identifying the constraint. So in this case, in the case of manufacturing the filter, measure the cycle time of each of the sub-processes, each of the steps of the process, like pulverizing the RHA, blending the RHA with silver nitrate, reducing nitrate with a blended media, etc., etc. And it was found that the drying the media has the longest cycle time, and the longer the cycle time was, that meant longer it took to produce a unit quantity or a batch quantity, and that became the constraint, right? And then we compared this, as you see on the next slide, with one another to find that drying the media was the root cause and was the constraint in this manufacturing process with having the longest cycle time. The next long cycle time was filling compacted media at 49 seconds, right? So we now have identified the first step of identifying the constraint. Now let's look at the root cause of this constraint. What is causing this cycle time to be 71 seconds, and what can be done to reduce the cycle time if we were to look at. So we identified here, the team identified here 4 issues that were causing this cycle time to be as high as 71 seconds, and these were the reliability of reduced draft fan, poor burning efficiency of the hot air generator, heat losses, and poor fuel efficiencies. And related to that, each one of them, there were solutions that were found and discovered, right? So the third step was, once we have discovered the actions that we can take to reduce the cycle time, we subordinate all the other activities to this constraint. And since the drying is still the longest lead time operation, so this delay in this step would really affect the throughput of the manufacturing process. So for this to happen, to keep this cycle time, this constraint subordinate other activities, what we must do is we must make sure that at the input side, there's never a shortage of material that would lead the drying to get stagnated or be waiting for material to happen. So adding the stockpile, or in the TOC parlance, we call it a buffer, adding the buffers to the input material of the dryer and allowing the dryer to operate even when there is a shortage of its input has led to the upstream due to issues with the upstream of processes. That would lead to maximizing throughput through this entire manufacturing process. Similarly, at the end of the dryer process, there shouldn't be anything that can hamper the production to be held up or the dryer to be shut down because of the downstream operation being not ready, like stockpiling of material there. And like this, we need to subordinate all the other activities to this constraint activity developed, which is the drying activity. The next step is to elevate this constraint, which basically means how can we reduce the cycle time from 71 seconds to whatever best possible. And this could be done in many ways. The simplest and easiest but costly way is to add capacity or add an additional piece of equipment to augment the capacity of the dryer, or to put 2 in parallel. That's the most expensive operation that we can have. So the issues that is impaired in the drying is the moisture in the air, which is heated for the drying. So the air will be capable of drying material if there's no moisture in this. So if We could achieve some moisture removal material of the air by installing a dehumidifier that dries the air. That could also lead to reducing the cycle time or elevating the capacity of the drying capacity. Another intervention could be the use of a small dryer that they found that there was another small dryer lying unused in the plant of the same company. So if this material will be free of cost, hence existing main dryer is a constraint, adding another piece of unused capacity could, an unused dryer could elevate the constraint to further level. So once we have elevated the constraint by removing the root causes and doing anything else that we can find in the most economical way, the fifth step is to go back to the one to find the next constraint. And doing all this step, we realized that the drying of the media was reduced from 71 seconds to 49 seconds, and it still was the largest with the has the largest cycle time, but there was another process which is filling and impacting of the media, compacting of the media. That was the parallel process with as much longer cycle time. So you could look at working on both these steps of the whole process to further. So there were two constraints now, and you could go through the cycle of 1 to 4 steps again in seeing how can this be required. But in this case, this 49 seconds of drying time and 49 seconds of filling and compacting media step were just good enough to produce the quantity that we needed. So there wasn't anything more needed to be done. So having understood how do we use TOC to increase the throughput by reducing cycle time, what do we do in the next module? So in the next module, we will take a look at where do we go from here? Having done this, what is the next step? So we have a design that is optimized, and we have now cost which is optimized. So what is the next step? We'll take a quick recap of the whole process and see where do we go from here. So thank you so much for watching this fourth lecture of this module of optimizing and predicting in this course in developing winning prototype. I hope you continue to learn something new, enjoy, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next lecture.